Good afternoon. This webinar offers closed captioning. To enable closed captioning, click on the live transcript button on the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred method. Welcome to the Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection webinar. Please note any website or email that I mentioned will be posted in the chat. For those seeking business license assistance, you can visit us here at City Hall or call 312-74-GO-BIZ. Also, business license can be applied for or renewed online at chicagobusinessdirect.org. If you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. To learn more about this program, please visit chicago.gov/business education. This webinar is being recorded and will be available at youtube.com/Chicago BACP. We'd like to encourage all attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box to send your questions. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Please note that the views, information, and opinions expressed during this webinar are solely those of the presenter and do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection or the City of Chicago. At this time, I will now turn this webinar over to BACP Commissioner, Mr. Ken Meyer.
Thank you. Hello, webinar attendees. My name is Ken Meyer, and I am the Commissioner for the City of Chicago, Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, also known as BACP. BACP's core mission is to support businesses and to protect consumers and workers, to make Chicago vibrant and safe for all. This week is National Consumer Protection Week, sponsored by the Federal Trade Commission. It is an opportunity for consumers to increase their knowledge of consumer laws and how to prevent falling prey to fraudsters. BACP is a proud partner, and in support of this week, we are holding educational webinars on pertinent consumer safety topics. Before we start, I want to share the several BACP consumer protection campaigns to help protect Chicagoans from acts of consumer fraud and deceptive practices. The BACP Be Informed, Be Protected campaign aims to provide consumers with simplified tips and resources across a wide array of topics. The series of flyers are geared toward protecting consumers from fraud and informing them of the actions they can take if they become a victim to fraud. Additionally, the Ride Smart Chicago campaign provides safety and consumer awareness information for passengers of taxicabs, ride hail, and other public passenger vehicles. For more information, please visit chicago.gov/consumer protection. All of this to say, our consumer protection outreach and education efforts are year-round. But today, our webinar is presented by the Chicago Better Business Bureau and the Federal Trade Commission, both of which are key, important organizations that provide resources for our consumers. With us today are our longtime partners, Steve Bernas, President and CEO of the Chicago Better Business Bureau, also known as BBB, Tom Johnson, Vice President of Public Relations at the Chicago Better Business Bureau, and Bill Hodor, attorney with the Federal Trade Commission Midwest region. Thank you for sharing insights and tactics on how consumers can be knowledgeable and aware of scams and fraud. I hope this webinar is found to be valuable to all of our attendees. Please enjoy this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you so much for all your great support and partnership over the years we had with your amazing team at the Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. Your leadership and joining us together today, being here with us for these webinars to protect consumers and businesses is always greatly appreciated. We urge all of our attendees today to make sure you bookmark and follow the BACP news and the great events and information they provide. Also, for those wanting to keep up with the BBB, you can follow us at anything at Chicago BBB or sign up for our consumer newsletter at bbb.org/Chicago Buzz. Another great partner of ours is the Federal Trade Commission, as Ken said, which works tirelessly to protect the public from scams and unfair practices and helps enforce the protection laws of everything, and it returns millions of dollars to the people itself. Just a side note, we urge people to also visit the ftc.gov website to get free copies of your credit report The BBB is a big proponent of people checking their credit report at least twice a year, especially when you change the clock. So it's going to be coming soon. So we want you to remind you to do that today. Before I introduce myself, I'd like to introduce Bill Hodor again from the Federal Trade Commission. He's also an expert on scams and protecting our identity. And maybe Bill, you can tell us a little bit about the FTC and yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. And I'd like to echo Steve's comment. Ken, thank you for having us. It's wonderful to partner with both BACP and the Better Business Bureau. And although this is National Consumer Protection Week, this is a week really set aside to bring attention to consumer protection issues and to help educate consumers and small businesses about consumer protection. It's not just 1 week, it's really a year-round effort. We don't want to limit it to just 1 week of the year to remind folks of the resources that are available and the education that's available to them should they find themselves in a situation or fall victim, unfortunately, to a scam. But a brief introduction for those of you that don't know. Hopefully you already know who the FTC is, and hopefully you've already visited our website. But if you don't, the FTC is the nation's principal consumer protection agency. We are the oldest independent agency of the federal government. And we are headed up by 5 commissioners that are appointed by the president. As an agency, we're a very small agency. We have about 1,100 people from top to bottom in 7 regional offices. I am an attorney that works out of our Midwest region office in downtown Chicago. And although we are a small agency, we really do have a big mission. And that mission is to protect consumers and competition in the marketplace. And we do that by preventing anti-competitive practices, deceptive and unfair business practices. And really our tools that we have to be able to do that is through law enforcement, through advocacy, through advising Congress, advising other agencies, and by education, something that we're doing here today, educating the public about what we see about the scams that are out there, the resources that are available to them as well. You know, when people ask me, what do I do as an attorney for the Federal Trade Commission? In a nutshell, I tell them I sue bad people. And really that's what I do. I mean, I'm in court, I'm suing the people who are perpetrating fraud on consumers. So I've been with the agency for, well over 20 years, and I've seen a lot of things. So unfortunately, nothing surprises me, but the scam artists are always out there trying to unfortunately defraud consumers. And we're here today to hopefully give you some information, give you some resources, educate you on what you can do to protect yourself. Thanks, Steve, for that introduction.
Well, greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for that as well. And I'd like to tell you a little bit myself. I'm Steve Bernas. Again, for those who don't know me, I'm the president and CEO of the Chicago and Northern Illinois Better Business Bureau. So I've been here with just a short period of time with the Better Business Bureau, just 35 years. So I just surpassed my 35th year at the BBB. I love our organization. I love working with the governmental agencies and helping consumers in any way we possibly can to prevent them from falling victim to any types of scams. The organization itself has been around quite some time as well. The BBB has been around since 1912. So actually, 2 years before the Federal Trade Commission came into organization, the BBB was around helping protect businesses at first, and then we help protect consumers. So I've been here quite a long time and enjoy the work we do here, and would like to help protect businesses and consumers with today's webinar. As Bill mentioned, there's never surprises for any of us. Bill and I will go over a little bit about the background of what we see each and every day, and hopefully you'll get to learn some things. And please ask any questions that you would like to ask the BBB or the FTC or the city as well. So right now, let me just bring up the PowerPoint presentation. Just 1 second. All right, there we go. Hope everybody can see it okay. There you go. So this is a sign of a better business. That's our seal. You'll see it a lot of times on different organizations' websites. We're founded by the business community itself back in 1912. There's my contact information. I'll provide it later as well in case you ever need anything from the BBB. And obviously the areas code's wrong. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. It's 312. You could always just put my name in the computer and you can get my information as well. Just a real background on the BBB because it tells a great story. Again, 4 years after the FBI. So we started right after the FBI started, and we are there to protect businesses first. Then we moved into the consumer arena. We are a private nonprofit organization. We're not a governmental agency. And our vision really is clearly an ethical marketplace where buyers and sellers can trust each other. And the trust is the most important aspect of any business dealings. As you know, you have to trust the individual, the consumer, the business, or whatever it may be in order to do business with them. So we serve both consumers and businesses. We do buyers trusting sellers and sellers trusting buyers as well. So it's a twofold approach in helping really level the playing field so everybody can feel confident they're buying from a legitimate organization and not a scammer or the bad businesses that we want you to stay away from. The next slide is the frauds and scams. So we see a lot of frauds out there. As Bill mentioned, there's never a dull moment. My wife texted me last night. She got an email allegedly from Amazon saying that a $5,000 order just went through. Call this number if it's not you. So she called up and panicked. So it's nonstop. They use cutting edge technology now. In the old days, you could tell what a scam was. You could look at the misspellings and things of that nature. You cannot tell the difference today. So we'll go into a little bit later on about what they're doing. And their purpose is to steal your money. That's it. They want to steal your money to getting good at it. They practice day in and day out. And that's why they succeed on such a great level. And anyone could be a victim. And I've said this time and time again, I've been a victim of identity theft, which is still, we believe, the fastest growing white collar crime today still. And I couldn't stop it. Previous Attorney General Lisa Madigan was a victim of identity theft too, several times. She couldn't stop it. So it's just it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you'll become a victim of identity theft as well. So the BBB is well known for protecting consumers from scams. So this part of the presentation, Bill and I will go over. I'll go over my scams, and Bill will chime in with his expertise as well, as he's been doing this for a long time with his organization. And we want to try to help educate you, your family members. I know some of you are small businesses. Some businesses are scammed, but you also have relatives, friends, families, mothers that are scammed continuously in some way. And hopefully this information will help you in some way. So I'll start off with our number one scam for us at the BBB is online purchase. And ever since the pandemic, it's been a problem for the BBB and what we see out in the consumer marketplace. So it's number one for the third year in a row, and it took over number one right after as soon as the pandemic started because we shifted online with most of our commerce, as you know. Most often the BBB sees fake websites. You can't tell the difference because they copy and paste. It could be one little character off. It can be one little thing that is changed on the website. It makes you think you're doing business with an organization and you're not. And we've seen a lot of that around the holidays, the fake purses organizations and all those different type of organizations that say that they're a legitimate business. What we're seeing at the BBB side, at least, is often pet related. And you say, how does that happen? Well, that's a lot of, buying pets online, buying animals online. We've seen a lot in the dog arena with frauds. We've issued major studies in the last few years on this. You tend not to want to buy a pet online without meeting the dog first. And there's other things that you have to be worried about, but there's a lot of scams online on that. So I'd like to, Billy, any other thoughts on this?
It's interesting, Steve, as you're mentioning, this is now number one for a third year in a row. And obviously this just started, to be number one during the pandemic as everybody switched to shopping online. And a lot of the things that you're saying is the stuff that we see as well. Especially shortly after the pandemic started and everybody was scrambling to get, personal protective equipment and masks and gloves and hand sanitizers and all that. We saw a huge increase in the number of fake websites that were popping up that were purporting to, sell these products and that you supposedly had these products in stock, and even legitimate websites that actually sold these products at one time, but no longer had these things in stock. were purporting to, be able to deliver within a short period of time. And of course, there are always going to be some unscrupulous people out there who are trying to take advantage of the situation. And the pandemic was just one of those situations where people were trying to take advantage and get people to pay for products that they never had any intention of delivering. Hopefully, as we sort of return to normal, we see this drop back down. But I think a lot of people still have learned and have become much more comfortable doing shopping online, and so we still want to remind people that they got to be vigilant, when they're visiting websites, and to keep track of where they're going. And as Steve pointed out, purchasing pets online. Again, we got used to. Who would ever think we'd be purchasing pets online, prior to the pandemic? But you need to be vigilant of what's out there, where you're buying from. Is it a reputable business that you're buying from? Is this website a just, did it pop up overnight? And there are telltale signs that we want folks to be aware of, so that they don't end up getting scammed by online purchase fraud.
You said it correct, Bill, with obviously reputable organization. That's where the BBB comes in. We have a lot of information on businesses, and we grade businesses as well. And we let consumers know about the businesses, what the consumers in the last 3 years had dealings with them, what kind of record they have with them. It's so important to do the research on them. My biggest frustration in my career, Bill, as you know, has been from consumers calling us or the city or your office after they've fallen victim to a scam. I wish they would have spent all that time, energy, and effort ahead of time, and they wouldn't have been scammed. So there's other research besides the Better Business Bureau, but simply putting the name in the Google search and putting the word scam next to it can help you find some information about the business. But as Bill said, if you don't, as I always say too, is you don't find anything in the business, that could be a sign too that business could have started that day. So just because they have no information, or negative or positive, doesn't make them a good business. You have to find something, do some research on them. So it's a great point. Online purchases are a big problem. We're seeing it here, and it's a national problem as well as international problem.
And Steve, if I may jump in just real
Sure.
quick before we leave that slide, just to remind consumers, even if you're shopping at a legitimate website and they promise a delivery of your product within a certain time frame, and we did see a lot of this, that undelivered goods, within the time frame that was promised. There are laws that protect you as a consumer. If you are told that something is supposed to be delivered within a certain time frame, we do, the FTC does enforce a mail and internet telephone order rule that requires you be given opportunities to cancel a transaction if it's not delivered within a certain time period or within a promised time period. So there are laws out there to protect you as a consumer, even when you're purchasing from legitimate websites and your products don't come within the time period that you were told.
Exactly. Thanks, Bill. It's great information, and doing the research on the background of the company is so paramount importance. And following the links. So if somebody sends you a link to go to this website to buy something, that you still want to check out that company more so than just by clicking on a link. We did one study recently where 65% of our complaints filed on online purchases were from consumers who had no intention of buying that product that day. Think about it, 65% of the people that filed complaints had no intention of buying that product that day. That means the marketing worked well for that organization and they didn't do any research. Again, in my 35 years, that's my biggest frustration, is that consumers don't check out the company ahead of time, not after when it's too late. So moving on to the next slide is phishing scams. And the Better Business Bureau position on this is don't click on those links because you don't know where they're actually going. I would rather, the Better Business Bureau would rather have you go directly to the company itself and do the business with them and check on them that way. For instance, I mentioned earlier in the call that my wife received an Amazon email yesterday saying that she placed an order and she didn't. They said, click here or call this number. And that's what they want you to do, is click on that. They're really imposter scams. I'm sure Bill will have a lot more to say about this as well, but they're really just people being imposters and saying that there's somebody that they're truly not. And it happens with the big organizations. It happens with anybody because you think it's them. Again, I hate to bring my family to my sister-in-law recently gave her social security number out to somebody because they called and the caller ID said Social Security Administration. It was an imposter who was saying they were with the government and wanted her social security number, and she gave it to them. She thought it was them. So be very careful on clicking on any links, because they can lead to malware and spam on your computer. It can do a lot of damage to your computer. If you might recall, about 5 years ago, a South Suburban police station had to pay the ransomware because they did have a problem and a breach, and they were able to get into the police data, and they actually had to pay the bad guy, the scammer. And recently, I just met with a law firm who recently was breached as well, and they locked their files up, and they actually had to pay $1 million in ransomware to get their files back. They had no other choice. So it does happen. They can do a lot of damage. Just please don't click on those links. Tell your family and friends, go directly. If you think it's Amazon sending you an email or your bank or whatever it is, go to your bank directly and call them on the back of your card. Don't follow those links. Bill?
One thing I might add here, Steve, is especially with phishing scams. I mean, the phishing scams have been around for a while. I mean, certainly since the rise of the internet and email and stuff. But I think what is particularly troubling, especially recently, is just how sophisticated these are getting, and how convincing these things can look when you receive them. So if you get an email that purports to be, from your bank, they look extremely legitimate. Even the links may be formatted in such a way so that it looks like it's going to your bank. You may click on these links and you may be taken to a website that is formatted to look exactly like your bank. So, for example, though, if I get an email that says my Chase account has been suspended, click here and enter whatever information to unsuspend it. I don't have an account at Chase, so I'm going to know real quick that this is a phishing scam. But for somebody that does have an account at that bank, they look convincing. It's very easy to copy stuff off of the internet, to copy logos, to copy web pages, to format things to look very legitimate. So the word of advice here is, certainly if you receive a text or an email or something, and you have no clue what this is about, don't believe it. Certainly go to the company's website, independent of the link in the text or the email, to verify whether or not it is legitimate. Never click links in emails or texts to take you there. Always be suspicious of those, no matter how legitimate they look, because they do. They look really good. And sometimes you have to take a double take, and I've caught myself. And again, I see this day in and day out. And I have to think twice. Is this legit or is it not? Because they're that convincing. And Steve is right. A lot of times you would be able to tell that these were phony by spelling mistakes and formatting issues, or just something looked odd about it. But now these are getting very sophisticated and look very legitimate.
And right, Bill, you can't tell the difference. Sometimes you have to do a double take. I've done many double takes as well, but sometimes they're so creative. They put like the URL of the company, of the bank or financial institution, up somewhere in the email. You think it's legitimate, but down lower is the bad URL. So again, as Bill and I suggest, is deal directly with the bank or financial institution or whomever, Amazon, whatever called you. Just don't click on those links. And it's also on the phones, and not just the computer links. It's the phone links that can lock your phone up. They can do damage to your phone and get into your phone that way by giving them access to it. So never click on the links. I'd rather you not click on the links and go directly to the website, or if it's AT&T or whomever, call the number that not the number that they provide in the email, because last night my wife got it and it was not Amazon's number they wanted to call her back. It's the number they wanted to steal her identity in some way. And
so, a word of a warning here, Steve, with phishing scams is, sometimes people may click on these links and think, well, they didn't ask for any money, or I didn't send them any money, I didn't get taken for any money. In many cases, these types of scams, it's not that they're going to ask you directly for money. What they want is information. What they want is your login information to your Amazon account or to whatever your bank account. They want information about you. They want your social security number, because that later on is going to lead to theft. It's going to lead to identity theft, or it's going to give them access to an account and they're going to be using your account to purchase products or something like that. So it may not be, as obvious as they asked for money and I didn't give it to them. They're looking for information, which is going to lead to theft down the road.
Exactly, Bill. And sometimes they steal information right off your computer, so then they have access to your email accounts. And we had one consumer recently called me. They got into her email address and they just put in the keywords like social security number, bank account number. How many times have you sent an email to somebody? Oh, here's my credit card number, or here's my social security number, whatever it may be. They have access to all the information. So sometimes they send you to sites, and sometimes they put spam and malware on your computer where they actually have control of your computer, and they can start sending money out of your accounts too. We've seen that times with those money transfer apps where they actually will, start sending. It was in the news recently. They had some problems in Chicago where they get into your account and they start sending money out, and as well as your phones too. So you got to be very careful on that. And phishing, just don't click on those links. It's safer not to click on those links and go directly to the company itself and talk to them about it, the problem. So next on our list is counterfeit products. And I know we briefly touched on this with the online complaints that are up on the online, buying and selling, but counterfeit products are on the offline world as well. It can be anywhere from, like I said, up there is clothing, electronics, shoes, purses, but it could be anything. It could be smoke alarms, it could be batteries, it could be anything. When you're buying from an unknown organization or an organization that's deceitful and not trustworthy, you can run into problems like that. Not only does it hurt the economy, but it can hurt you or your family depending on what product you're buying that's counterfeit, does not meet the manufacturer's specifications or things of that nature. So they put names on it, make it look like it. So if somebody comes up to you, wants to buy something that's a name brand, it's half of the price. I mean, that's the sign that's what we call the tip off to the rip off at the BBB. You get what you pay for, and the counterfeit products are infiltrating the marketplace. A lot of during the Christmas holidays, but it's continuously also in the offline marketplace as well. And it's including like T-shirts, if somebody wins a big game, they always have those T-shirts, ridiculously low prices, but then you wash them and then it runs off and ruins all of your other, clothes in the washing machine. So there's downfalls for that, not only hurting the economy, but also going to harm your family in some way. And we've seen it time and time again on that. You got to know who you're buying from and you got to trust them, right, Bill?
Absolutely. And Steve, again, going back to the pandemic, I think we saw an increase in the number of complaints that we were receiving too about counterfeit products, especially as people were scrambling, to get personal protective equipment and stuff. And, for example, companies selling what they purported to be N95 face masks, which were in fact not N95 face masks. They were completely counterfeit. But again, you got to know who you're purchasing from, a reputable retailer. And sort of it's the old cliche, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So, if that designer purse is, going for, far, far less money than what it should, the chances that it's real are probably slim.
It's so right. The too good to be true. It happens all the time. And it's almost like that you get that red flag, red warning, inside yourself and thinking, I shouldn't have done it. And a lot of times I'm sure Bill could say the same thing. We talk to consumers, I had a feeling something was wrong. They had a lot of red flags. I just didn't believe it or wanted to believe it was true. And it wasn't. So you got to trust the organization itself and know them. And again, if the offer seems to be true, Jess, it's better to walk away than untangling the mess that you're going to embark on or get involved with, because it can cost you, lots of money in terms of, that you've lost.
Right. And one thing to keep in mind here too, it's not just money that's lost. Some of these products are downright dangerous, especially, Steve has highlighted here, electronics. I mean, if you're purchasing, for example, a phone charger and it's a counterfeit phone charger, that has not manufactured, properly. There are instances where these have caught fire and have, caused substantial damage. So there are other risks involved in counterfeit products than just losing money.
Right. And you don't realize the extent of it. I mean, from smoke alarms to batteries, it's all types of counterfeit products. So it's best to know who you're buying from. And if the offer seems good to be true, please continue going on and buy from somebody you know and trust. Next one is employment scams. We're seen as number 4 at the Better Business Bureau. And it's really not only scam job offers, but often work at home. And then sometimes it's legitimate job searches, scams, employment. What I mean by that is that they're getting so creative, is that they're taking you through so you apply online for something, and all your information's online, your resume's online. They have all this information. They call you and say, we have a job for you, Steve. And they go through the process of interviewing you. So you think this is legitimate. And then they transfer you to somebody else. We'll talk to this person. They interview you. So it's like 2 or 3 different people that you're talking to. And it's like, it's too good to be true. And there's always a catch then. Then they will either want some money from you, or we need your account number, or we need your information, your social security number, your mother's maiden name. If you think about it, a lot of these things that they can get on employment offers is what they need for identity theft. So that's what concerns us immensely. I've talked to many consumers recently who went on legitimate sites, put their information out there, and somebody saw it and took it, and they called them out of the blue. We have this job for you. And it's a well-known company, but they don't work for this well-known company. We had a consumer earlier in the year who they called him up, said, you got the job, you're making a couple $100,000 a year, but you have to also buy a phone, you have to buy a computer, and you have to ship it to us. We'll put our information on it, and we'll send it to you, and we'll pay you for it on your first check. Well, you buy the computer, you buy the phone, and you send it to them to put their corporate information on there, and you just send it to a scammer itself. So that's how creative they are and elaborate these schemes are getting. It's not just calling out of blue just at work and home offers like there are, but there are still work and home offers. So you're not going to get millions of dollars reading books or writing novels or sitting home doing nothing or stuffing envelopes. We've seen a little bit decrease in the work and home offers of the small time. Now they're going to the big time, where they kind of like steal your identity, and they offer these fake jobs. And a lot of them are scam job offers because there's no offer. I mean, they use a company's name. They may send you an advance check to buy equipment, and then they all of a sudden, oh, we sent you too much. Can you wire us the rest back? And that's another sign. So it's the signs that you get that something's fishy. And never leave these job sites. And a lot of these times they'll call you out of the blue because these job sites has protection on them. Again, there's no, as Bill would probably say too, there's no site that is 100% scam free, but a lot of these job sites have protection on it from scammers getting involved. But there also could be there, but never leave the sites. That's the key. Once they want to get you off the site, there's no protection at all, and then it's a field for them, right? Right, Bill?
You're absolutely right there. And employment scams have been around forever. One of the first cases that I was involved in when I came to the FTC was an employment scam. So, I mean, it has been around for a very long time. And I'm actually shocked to see, number 4 on your list, Steve. But again, it makes sense given where we have been, within the last couple of years, as everybody people lost their jobs, or people could no longer work. And what did they do? They went looking for jobs, and they go online, and there's employment scams galore, unfortunately, online. So you have to know who you're dealing with. And when it comes down to whatever the circumstances, anybody that's asking for money in return, or you have to buy this, or you have to do this, that's an immediate red flag. You should not have to purchase something or send money to somebody, for an employment scam. And, you're not going to make money sitting at home stuffing envelopes. You're not going to, make money at home doing online shopping and reviews and stuff like that necessarily. If somebody is making these bold promises or being, selling certain products and such, you got to be very skeptical. Do your research before you get involved in those types of opportunities.
Exactly, Bill. People that come to us when they've been scammed by these fake employment offers are actually looking for legitimate ways of supplementing their income. So you're right; they're not looking to get free money. They want to work, but unfortunately, these scammers know that, and they take advantage of the situation. But Bill said it best: if they ask you for money up front, or sending computers to somebody, and they promise you this great return, that's usually what we call the tip off to the rip off. And it's a warning from the Better Business Bureau not to do business with those organizations, and those are scammers. So do the research on them as much as possible. Moving on to number 5, and I've done this when I started, in 1987 with the Better Business Bureau was advanced fee loans. They were very popular back then because I came in at the time that the economy was coming out of a recession back in the late 80s, if you may recall. So when times get tough like we're in now, guess what? People can't pay their bills or they're in over their heads, and they go online and say, loans, and they got these great offers on Google and the others, and that you can get this money for for doing nothing and no credit check, and basically you just pay us a fee, and basically you get a loan without any questions asked. And we all know that's not doesn't happen. But if somebody's down on their luck, and I've talked to many people since 1987 in my career, they're not looking for free money. They're looking a way to help supplement their income and to provide for their families. And these scammers tell you everything you want to hear. So you think you're gonna have a check written or sent to your account tomorrow, but you just have to pay an administrative fee or a tax or whatever it may be. It's always an advance fee, and those advance fees on anything is always what we call the tip off to the rip off, as you can imagine, right, Bill?
Yep. And it's interesting because what's old becomes new again. You did this, you experienced this years ago. It goes full circle, it comes back around. And really it's the circumstances of the economy. And again, harkens back to being in the pandemic and people looking to supplement their income or a need. You should never have to pay an advance fee to get a loan. Just as you should never have to pay a fee to get a credit card, and there are rules that are out there to protect you from doing that. Again, a red flag: somebody's asking you to pay money, a fee in advance of getting a loan. Does that make sense? When you kind of think about it in the abstract, it's like, no, you're right, that doesn't make sense. I'm seeking money, legitimately seeking money, so why am I going to be putting money up front in order to get this? That should be a red flag. But again, it's one of those scams that has been around for so long, and it just morphs into something new. And they can be, again, they become high tech and become very savvy, but it's the same old scam we've been seeing for many, many years.
Yeah, they're right. Like you said, Bill, when people are desperate and they need money and they have to provide for their family or keep their lights on or keep their car so they can go to work, they just try to pull anything online and see what comes up. And a lot of consumers have to remember those first 2 or 3 listings on Google search returns or other search engine returns are advertisements. So those means those companies flip it on real quickly and can shut it off even quickly. That's not a legitimate site because it's on Google. You have to do the research on them. And a lot of times these fake offers, advanced fees, are ads. And they say ad on it, but consumers don't realize. I've talked to many consumers don't realize those are ads. And they kind of somehow have the bank official name in it or official name that makes it look like they're authentic and an institution that you can trust when actually it's an advance fee and they just want your advance fee money. And that's the tip off to rip off on those things. So number 6 is COVID scams. And I know a lot of it was earlier in the year, last year, because of the COVID type of, those companies out there for those fake reading sites and test results. We had several in Chicago that we issued warnings on national warnings to prevent these continuing on. And a lot of times they're not regulated at the time, and people are running to any place that can get a test at because there wasn't the availability as there is now. And, people try anything to get it done. And we found a lot of fake websites and a lot of fake testing centers. We had consumers telling us that, they happen to throw something out and they see all these other tests that were in there. So that means that people that took the test, were all being thrown out in garbage cans. So again, there was a few of those. It's not, they're all bad. It's on situations like that, anything health related. Again, I'm not an expert in the health arena, but we always say to deal with your healthcare provider first and foremost. Get a recommendation from them or a referral on them, not just going to anybody online without doing the research on them. Bill?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there, Steve. And I think what this being number 6 on your list illustrates is that a scam artist is always going to go to take advantage of what is, what's in the news, what's happening, what's current, what's on people's minds, what are people worrying about. And you're absolutely right that when everybody was wanting to get tested. You had, these pop-up test centers that were charging, or people weren't getting their test results. Not necessarily legitimate sites that unfortunately people were desperate to go to because they couldn't get them through regular channels. And scam artists are exactly, they know exactly what's going on, and they're trying to take advantage of the situation and trying to take advantage of you at a time when you're most vulnerable, when you're desperately looking to get tested because you believe you've been exposed or you have symptoms. You're not going to be thinking straight, and that's exactly what they want you to do, so that you're not thinking about this. And once they have your money and they're gone, you're left holding the bag, unfortunately, and they're long gone. And your chances of actually trying to get your money back are going to be slim to none. And in a situation like this, where your health is at risk, again, that's even worse. It's not just a matter of losing money, but your health is at risk when it comes to COVID scams too.
Exactly. This bodes well with that. Any scammers, as Bill mentioned, read the news, watch TV, and they see what's happening, and they kind of make a scam for that. So there's a scam for every industry, unfortunately, and I've seen it time and time again. So most people, when they've been scammed in this, say, I can't believe that there's scammers in this arena in the healthcare, but there are. And they'll just take advantage of anything that's in the news. So it's important to do the due diligence, checking them out, dealing with especially health related. Always go to your healthcare provider, because there's a lot of fake claims of many different healthcare things, from losing weight to preventing cancer and those types of things. We always suggest you go right to your healthcare provider and don't believe what you see online unless from a reputable source. And it's hard for you as a consumer to determine what's reputable or not. And so rather you deal with your own doctor, your healthcare provider in those situations. But there's a scam for everything, whatever industry you're in. I've seen it time and time again. There's bad actors in the industry that ruin it for everybody else. So this one is, again, as Bill said, a full circle. I handled these in 1987. How many times consumers have called me and said, I won, but they won't send me the money. And I sent them $5,000, $10,000 because they were told that they won a record jackpot, but it also wants you to fall victim to that. They guarantee that you won. Nobody can, if you didn't play, that's the key. If you didn't play, you're not going to win. And then only authorized lotteries are obviously the state-run lotteries, as we all know. And the other ones are the fake lotteries, especially asking for money. I've talked to many elderly people, especially they target the elderly on these. And, a lot of times they see, people winning on TV, whether it be the Publishers Clearinghouse or whomever, and they won this lottery, and they think they have a chance, and not supposed to tell anybody because it's still confidential yet. But we need you to send your taxes in, or we need you to send insurance money in, or whatever it may be. And especially with these record jackpots recently that we've seen in the Illinois lottery, or the big game, which is the multinational or multi-state rather lottery, it kind of excites people. And guess what? The scammers join in on that parade. They want to be there as well. The scammers go where the money's at. So, people are buying lottery tickets because there's a big prize. The scammers will be there, right, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, sweepstakes and lottery scams have been around forever. And this one in particular, I think they do tend to target older consumers more often, and a lot of times it's by telephone that these are promoted. And usually these are promotions for free prizes. Well, if it's really free, it shouldn't cost you anything to get a free prize. Oftentimes they'll be pitching, investments in foreign lotteries, or you've won a foreign lottery. We need you to send, you got to pay your taxes. Or it's stuck in customs. There's a customs fee that we need you to pay before we can actually release your check to you, something like that. If you've never played, you're never going to win, obviously. But if somebody's asking you for money for your prize, well, then that there too it is an absolute red flag. And one of the reasons that this is particularly bad, especially as it pertains to targeting older consumers, is a lot of times, especially on the telephone, the scam artists try to play on emotions. And they'll engage a consumer in conversation. They will string them along. They will spend countless hours even conversing, talking with people, just to earn their trust. And get them to open their wallets, and they'll it's disgusting, really, the tactics that they'll go to. They'll appeal to, well, don't you want to leave your children something and an inheritance? Here's and they really just tug at emotions and try to get people vulnerable that way. But it's out there. Free is free. If you really want something free, it shouldn't cost you anything to get it. But no, you didn't win the foreign lottery or the Canadian lottery or anything like that. And no, you should not be sending money so that your check can be issued to you from some lottery prize that you didn't win.
Exactly. A lot of times I talk to victims' family members about this because they run into a problem. They realize they're sending money to these individuals because they promise of winning the lottery. So please talk to your parents, your grandparents, the elderly, or whomever. It doesn't matter the age group, but really is they target the elderly. They promise all these sorts of things. They tell you to keep hush about it, keep quiet about it. And that's why a lot of times the family members don't come forward until it's too late, or sometimes they have passed on and then people are going through their financial matters and realize, what is this $10,000 to these people? And they realize they've been scammed. So just if you can remind, Bill said it the best, if you didn't play the lottery, you're not going to win the lottery. It doesn't happen that way. And especially the foreign lotteries, they don't do that at all. It's the biggest, one of the biggest scams out there. And I've been handling this since 1987, and it continues on. Like, any scam, the only way to put scams out of business is not to give them your business. You can have all the protection of laws that you want, but the scammers will find a way around it. And sometimes they're offshore. They're across the world somewhere, purporting these types of scams. So they're not somebody locally and trying to find them once they have your money, or you wired them money, or you gave them your check account number, or whatever it may be. Getting them back is very hard to do. So be careful on those foreign lotteries, local lotteries. Just deal with the state lotteries, and that's it. Moving on, number 8 for the Better Business Bureau is credit card scams. I mean, there's just so many different variations of this, and I'm sure Bill will have a wealth of information on this, but is this really these offers of credit cards that you can get a great rate? We just need your financial information, and guess what? You're giving them all that information about yourself because you're applying for a credit card. So they need your social security number. You've got to do something out of the blue calling you and saying he's got this great credit card offer, or a computer robot calling you and saying they have, press 1. You'd be very careful on that, because it's not most likely it's not a legitimate credit card company out of the blue like that. And especially if they're asking for information from you, you should be very apprehensive about giving anybody information that just calls you out of the blue because you don't know anything about them. And then also with this is the reverse, where is actually they call you to say they're your credit card company and there's a problem with your account, but I need your account number. Well, you're the credit card company. Why would I need to give you my account number? You should have it. So again, if you feel that if your credit card calling you or texting you, just don't answer those calls, or hang up and call the credit card company on the numbers on the back of your card. This way your assurance is that you're dealing with somebody directly, but they put the fear of you, and that you got to do something quickly, that you got to act on it quickly. Your account's been charged $10,000, Bill. You got to do something about it. If you didn't do it, press 4. Well, of course it's not you doing it. You're thinking you got $10,000 charged your account. You better do something quickly. They don't want you to think about it, right, Bill?
Yeah, now there's a bunch of different varieties and ways that credit cards are used in scams. There may be a legitimate reason for your credit card company to contact you. For example, if you did charge something and it's been flagged as a potentially fraudulent charge, they may be contacting you to verify whether or not that charge was legitimate. But they're not asking you for money, and they're not asking you for information. They already know who you are. Or they are asking you, and you should, never again click a link in a text or call a number that may appear on an email. Always call the number that's on the back of your credit card, or if you have, from your bill, call that number directly to make sure that you're dealing with your legitimate credit card company. These scams, first of all, again, you should never be charged an advance fee to get a credit card if somebody is offering you a credit card. And the other thing that I want to flag is because I'm sure we've all received call after call after call, these robocalls, from card services offering to reduce the interest rate on your credit card. Press 1, to be connected with it. They purport to be with your credit card company and they're going to reduce your interest rates. No, they're not. Trust me, they're not calling to reduce your interest rates. It's a scam that companies are doing out there to try to get you to sign up under the guise that they're going to reduce the interest rates on your credit cards. There's nothing that they can do to reduce the interest rates on your credit card. And there's nothing, if you are having financial difficulty paying your credit card bills, you should contact your credit card company directly. Never rely on a robocall or a telemarketing call that's reaching out to you, offering to provide you with assistance on reducing your credit card or reducing your balance or helping you file for bankruptcy or something to that effect. Because the chances are that's a scam and they're just looking out to get your money or your information.
This credit card scams, I've been doing this for a long time, there's so many different variations. We could probably spend the whole time on a webinar just explaining credit card scams. So it's important to understand, like Bill said, don't give them information about you, do the research on them, make sure it's your credit card company. It's best to call in the number on the back of your card as well. And all those fake promises are just to get you to divulge information. They tell you everything they want to hear. Oh, you don't have to pay your credit card this month, or we're going to, help you take away your debt. The credit card company is not going to help you take away your debt. You got to take your own debt away. So there's just so many different variations on credit card scams. We want consumers to be aware of that as well. Number 9, again, since 1987, I've been handling these. I'm sure Bill has a lot of information on this, is the home improvement scams. Every year, it's a continuous perennial problem, spring and then fall for the winter. From home improvement scams, there's people that come to your house, there's storm chasers, there's individuals that are just really trying to take advantage of the situation in any way, just coming door to door. The key to this is checking out the company itself. And if you do get somebody coming to your house, you just don't do business with them, because you still want to get 2 or 3 estimates. I mean, that's the key about home improvement scams, is doing all the research necessary. It's always the people that knock at your door and then they want to do business with, or happen to be down the street and they have this great discount program, or a bad weather has come into your area. I experienced it probably 3 years ago when I live in Naperville, and they had that big, we had a bad hailstorm. I can't tell you the amount of contractors that left items or knocked at my door in those 2 weeks, preceding that storm. But a lot of times where we're seeing a lot of, at least the Better Business Bureau's, consumers, paying the whole job up front. We try the third, paying a third up front, paying a third in the middle, and paying a third at the end of the thing, not just paying it all up front and not in cash. There's a lot of great businesses out there. I'm not trying to scare people, but this is one of the thorns in our side of these bad individuals, these scammers who take advantage of the situation. There's a lot of great businesses out there. The Better Business Bureau has a website that you can find accredited businesses. Look for the BBB seal, the sign of a better business. There's great businesses out there, but there's going to be these bad actors every time. They're down the street, or a bad storm, or they just, they have bad businesses. They're just bad contractors. And I've known some from 1987 who are still in business. Just because they have a license doesn't make them a good business. You just have to check those resources out and be careful with people door to door. Again, there's some legitimate organizations that will come door to door, but you still don't do business with them right away, because you want to get 2 or 3 estimates before doing business with them. If everybody did that and didn't pay cash and paid third down, third in the middle, third at the end, we'd be in a different situation, right, Bill?
Yeah, again, here you've got to, as a consumer, do your homework. Again, home improvement scams have been around for a very long time. When it comes to again, scam artists will follow the news. As Steve mentioned, if there's a hailstorm, chances are you might be getting somebody knocking on your door wanting to inspect your roof. And of course, you need your roof replaced, and we'll help you file out with your insurance company, all that. Well, you need to check the company out. Never take, what they're saying at face value. Always ask for references. And even, when you ask for references, you got to make sure that the legitimate references. And depending on the industry that they're in, are they licensed? Are they bonded? Are they insured? Are they licensed with the state? You need to be doing your homework to make sure that the company that you're going to be using is legitimate. Never pay upfront for the entire cost. Is it reasonable for a deposit? Yes. Do you have a contract? What are the terms of the contract? When, are payments due? Those sorts of things. So unfortunately, yes, we got to do our homework, but this is why we have to be vigilant, because otherwise it's going to end up costing you a lot more. If you get somebody who's just out to scam you, they're either going to just botch the job up and just do a really bad job, and it's going to cost you even more in the end, or they're just not going to show up and you're out money.
Exactly, Bill. A lot of times, and I've been doing this for 35 years, is not doing the background check of the individual that you do hire. So after you hire him or her, you want to do some research on them to make sure they have a license, make sure they have some bonding, and they have insurance. A lot of times they say, "Oh, I'm licensed, bonded, insured," but they are not. So you got to do that. If somebody gets hurt at your home when you're doing work, and like a worker gets hurt, and there's they don't have any insurance, guess what? They're going to come after your homeowner's insurance on that side. So you got to be very careful on that. Just deal with reputable business. There's many out there in every industry, but I want to assure you there's bad actors in every industry as well. And I've seen many of them, and a lot of times they have F grades with us, and they're just making too much money. They just don't care. They just take advantage of the consumers as much as possible. So there's the scammers, and you got the bad businesses. So you got a flip side to that as well. But just do the research on them. That's the most important thing. And doing the checking. Do they have a license and insurance? Calling those insurance companies and going over to those references and making sure that they did the work and things of that nature. So again, like Bill said, the contract, that's probably one of the other important things. I neglected to mention that having a signed contract. Having a business card with a price on the back of it is not a contract. That's not going to, I'm not an attorney, but that's not going to stand up in a court of law. I assure you. Right, Bill?
No, you're absolutely right. Contract, and read the contract. That's something we, as consumers, we don't want to do. I mean, contracts are written probably by lawyers, for lawyers. But we got to try to read these, go through them, try to understand them as much as we can, because really it's the contract that defines the terms of the relationship. And when something goes wrong, as inevitably things sometimes do go wrong, what is your recourse? What are your remedies? And a contract should spell all of that stuff out. So as much as we hate to have to read through these pages and pages of text, it's for your own good that you do. You're again doing your homework, and making sure that you are properly protected. And if there's something you don't like about a contract, don't sign the contract. Flag that first. Have that discussion, because sometimes contract terms can be changed. And if you're dealing with a legitimate company, you may talk that through. And so just make sure you understand what's in there, because there could also be surprise terms in a contract that are obviously, for the benefit of the contractor and not for you. So you need to be aware of everything. As long as you have full information and you understand it, you certainly can sign what you want, but you need to have that full information. You need to understand everything that's in there. So we just want to make sure that everybody knows of what their rights are. And it's usually going to be the contract that spells all that out for you.
Exactly. That's so important on that. But a lot of times the consumers that come to us, at least the ones I've talked to, about 90% of them did no research on them at all. They just hired them, whether it be a pretty ad in the yellow pages or online or whatever it may be. It's not indicative of how the company is going to operate. I assure you on that. You've got to do the legwork and doing the research on them. So many times people come to us after the fact, and then they spend 2 days looking into this matter. You know what, Steve? They are a scam. Well, they're bad business, whatever. Why did you spend that time ahead of time? You wouldn't have fallen victim to this. I know it's easier after the fact. In retrospect, everything's easier, but you've got to do the research on those business, especially home improvement, because that's usually a high dollar amount. And that contract, as Bill said, has to be ironclad and have everything in there. When are you going to finish by? When's the end date? They could have a start date, but they may not have an end date. Well, it's not in the contract. Who's going to take the garbage out of, the dumpster, if you have a dumpster, and make sure you have permits. There's just so many things that the Better Business Bureau has a website replete with information on what to ask contractors and what to look out for, as well as the city of Chicago. And I'm certain the FTC has a lot of information on that, but go to our websites and find information about the individual, but also how to prevent from being scammed in the first place. That is most helpful. So number 10, this is one that we could spend days talking about as well. We only have a short period of time on this one, but it really, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I assure you that, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen it time and time again. A lot of my friends' identity have been stolen recently, a lot since the pandemic. We see those fake job job claims, employment claims. They've hit, radio stations all in mass. I know one time I got a call from like 4 or 5 WGN reporters that day, and they all got that letter from the state saying that somebody, filled out a job request for, termination, and that they were trying to seek employment benefits. So identity theft's everywhere. A lot of times we give out too much information, and sometimes you can't do anything to prevent it. Like I think I know everything about consumer protection, but my identity was stolen. That could have happened in a breach. That could have happened by a rogue employee in an organization I gave my information to. They went through it. So you'll never know the source, but there's ways of protecting your data and not giving it out. And I think you need to share that with your parents, your friends and family. Is don't give out any information that you don't need to. They should have a reason why they're giving out information. Somebody calling out of blue doesn't need all that information on those situations. Protecting your banking information, your financial institution, all that information, keeping it safe and sound, and not just freely giving out to anybody and clicking on those links and putting information, because they will steal your identity. And even in breaches, I mean, somebody might be part of a breach. You get a letter, and a year later you feel good because nothing happened. Well, as we all know, they build a file on you. It can take 5 years. It can take 10 years before they start stealing your identity in some way. And you got to keep in mind your kids have identities. So the FTC bill will talk about the credit reports and things of that nature, but you got to keep watch on your children's identity in any way, shape, or form. It's just getting to be where everything seems to be centered somewhat around identity theft. And one other thing I just want to talk about is those surveys online, and they ask you for that personal information, like what street did you live on, or what's your high school graduation year. Well, that's all information they need to steal your identity, because sometimes if you do get a credit report or your banking information, they have all your previous addresses, so they want to find out where you lived before. So if they have that information, they can steal your identity in some way. And a Better Business Bureau, this is at least from our office side, I could say we also want consumers to freeze their credit reports. And I can Bill's the expert in that arena. He can talk about that. But especially if you've been a victim of identity theft or not, it's so important to freeze it to make it a little bit more difficult for somebody to steal your identity. But again, Bill's the expert in this. So I'll turn it over to Bill right now.
Well, as Steve mentioned, and it's true, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen to you, it's a matter of when. And I mean, I guess the biggest piece of advice that we can give here and to try to prevent identity theft is to be very cautious of the type of information that you're giving out. Never give out any personal information, to somebody that you don't know the reason for why they need it. And it could be some, completely innocent piece of information. Like Steve said, what year did you graduate from high school? Well, you may think, oh, that's no big deal. You could probably figure that out with a little bit of internet sleuthing. But that year of high school graduation could be, the code that's needed to get into a credit card account or to access your credit report, or some seemingly innocent piece of information can certainly be used against you. There is no way we can 100% guard ourselves against identity theft, unfortunately, because a lot of the information about us is outside of our control. As Steve mentioned, data breaches occur. Information about us gets out there, and that information can be used for identity theft. But what is the best way to figure out if you've become the victim of identity theft? Well, you may get, a credit card in the mail that you never applied for. That's sort of obvious. But the other best way to determine if you've been the victim of identity theft is by checking your credit reports regularly. And certainly you are entitled, to a free copy of your credit report from the credit reporting agencies, once a year. And you need to take advantage of that. As Steve also mentioned, put a freeze on your credit report. You can freeze your credit report so no new credit accounts can be opened without going through a process that would involve you. And we've got information. The FTC publishes a lot of information on the steps that you can take to protect yourself against identity theft. And at least if your information is out there, to prevent that information from being used against you, because the horror stories that I have heard from people who are the victims of identity theft, they are incredible. People are left holding the bag and trying to pick up the pieces after somebody's identity has been stolen. And it's not, people may be using your information to open credit accounts or get car loans or mortgages in your name. It's not just a financial impact, but people are also using your information to commit crimes. And you could be unknowingly associated with a crime that somebody committed in your name and you don't know it. So I mean, the consequences of identity theft are very severe. So you do need to take steps to make sure that you don't fall victim as best as you can, and as well as what to do if you have fallen victim. And again, the FTC maintains a website, identitytheft.gov. Please go there. There are some fantastic resources. There's help for what to do, who to contact, how to freeze your credit report, how to put fraud alerts on your credit reports, things of that nature if you've been the victim. Unfortunately, I could spend hours and hours, and Steve and I could both, we could spend hours talking about identity theft and the steps that you need to take, or ways that you can protect yourself. Unfortunately, we don't have hours to talk about it, but it's one of those things that we just want to flag for you, and to also make you aware of how easy it is to reveal information about yourself that you may not even realize is valuable to an identity thief. Again, something as simple as, what year did you graduate from high school? Where were you born? Things of that, mother's maiden name. Well, guess what? Those are passwords or passcodes that are often used on financial accounts or other accounts that you may have established, that an identity thief is going to use to try to take over an existing account or to open a new account in your name. And you're going to be left holding the bag and having to pick up the pieces after that. Again, we could do a whole session on just this, and I'd be happy to do so, but unfortunately we're limited on time. So I will leave it at that, but certainly please do visit the Better Business Bureau's website, the FTC's website at ftc.gov, as well as all of our identity theft resources at identitytheft.gov.
It's a great point, Bill. I always direct people there as well, even if they haven't been a victim of identity theft, so they have the knowledge of what to look out for, and also to find out what happens if your identity is stolen. It happens to a lot of people, and more so since the pandemic. People have never been stolen their identities because everybody's online. And one other thing that Bill touched on is great is the passwords. Keep your passwords, change your passwords. Don't use the same password for all your systems, because once they get it, guess what? They have access to everything. And some places have the two-factor authentication, where they require you to, they send you information or text you to make sure it's you before going in. It is a pain sometimes. It takes a little bit more time, but I assure you it's a lot less pain, as Bill said, than going through identity theft and somebody stealing your identity, or as part of a crime spree or whatever it may be. Some people have taken years to clean up their credit. If it's that bad, it's a rat's nest. So take preventative maintenance protection on that, and go to the FTC website and the BBB website as well. Now let's turn it over to Bill and talk a little bit about the Consumer Centennial Network.
Sure. Now, I also want to make sure we leave some time at the end to address some of the questions that I know have been popping in. So I'll run through this rather quickly, but I'm certainly happy to address these further, either offline or people can certainly reach out to me. But as part of what we do at the FTC, we do take in reports from consumers about problems that they experience in the marketplace. And these reports are stored in what we call the Consumer Sentinel Network. We have a relationship with many law enforcement agencies and consumer organizations who also feed their complaint data into the Consumer Sentinel Network, including the Better Business Bureau. We also have relationships with many state attorney general's offices who feed their complaint data into Consumer Sentinel. Other organizations, the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, AARP, all feed complaint information into the Consumer Sentinel network. And I may call it Consumer Sentinel or Sentinel. I kind of use those terms interchangeably. But the reports that we take in, they're stored in the secure database that is made available to law enforcement. It's a little bit different from the Better Business Bureau because the FTC can't get involved in individual consumer disputes. But using the data that's in the Consumer Sentinel network, we, including our law enforcement partners, can use that information to spot trends that we're seeing, to identify questionable business practices and targets, and to enforce the law. Now, certainly what I do today is completely different from what I was doing 5 or 10 years ago. And a lot of that is determined by what we see happening in Consumer Sentinel. And again, we're looking at it sort of at a national level, as the economy sort of, falters a little bit, financial crime, financial fraud, it tends to increase. Internet scams have constantly been on the increase as years have gone by. But the Consumer Sentinel network has been in existence since 1997, and we've collected tens of millions of reports about fraud, identity theft, and other consumer protection topics. And we just released our data book for 2022, and this takes an in-depth look at the data that we collected for 2022. And in 2022, Consumer Sentinel received over 5.1 million consumer reports. Now, those 5.1 million reports are sorted into 29 different categories. And those categories, I hate to be technical here, but they're sorted into 3 different buckets. One bucket is fraud, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about today. And these are where consumers are reporting a scam or an attempt to scam them out of money. Basically somebody attempting to take money from you. The other bucket is identity theft, as we just discussed, where somebody steals your identity, your personal identifying information to commit fraud or theft, maybe not against you, but certainly in your name. That is a whole separate category. The third bucket that we sort these complaints to, we just kind of call other consumer protection topics. And these may be reports of issues. They're not necessarily fraud or attempted fraud, but they're problems that are occurring. For example, if a consumer reports a complaint about a bank or a problem with a credit report or something like that. But we mine the Consumer Sentinel information often, and that helps us to determine where we need to focus our law enforcement efforts. Now, in 2022, just looking at the fraud complaints that we received, the FTC received over 2.4 million fraud reports, which is a big chunk. And in those 2.4 million fraud reports, 26% of consumers reported a loss. The total loss that was reported by consumers in 2022 exceeded $8.8 billion, and that is a huge number. And the median loss was $650 per consumer. Now, if we look at the data from 2021, which I've included below on this slide, we'll see that the number of complaints that we received in 2021 was actually higher. Fraud complaints was actually higher than in 2022, but the amount lost was significantly higher in 2022 than it was in 2021. 5.9 billion reported lost in 2021 versus 8.8 billion reported loss in 2022. It's a staggering number. And now this is nationwide from the reports that we've received. So although the number of reports that we received has gone down in the last year, the amount that people are reporting that they lost to fraud has increased, and that's just a staggering number. A couple of quick statistics I want to highlight, Steve, if we could go to the next slide. It's kind of, for a lot of people, it's counterintuitive, but younger people actually report losing money to fraud more often than older people. We often think that older populations are easier targets. Well, the reality is that younger people lose money to fraud more often than the older demographic. But Unfortunately, the statistics show that when people who are, when older adults have a loss, that loss is significantly higher than younger age brackets. So here's just a quick graph showing consumers in the age bracket of 20 to 29, the median loss was $548. So more people report losing money in that age bracket than older brackets. But if we go to the age bracket of between 70 and 79, that's $1,000 is the median loss. And then for 80 plus, it's over $1,600 reported loss. So although older age groups are not scammed as often, when they are scammed, the amount of money that they lose tends to be much, much higher. Steve, if we could go to the next slide, I'll just quickly run through this because I wanted to highlight a couple of things that the data bears out. When it comes to when people report the payment method. So if somebody has been defrauded or an attempted fraud against them, and they report a payment method, what this shows here is that credit and debit cards are the top two methods by which people try to defraud consumers. So those are always very, very, very popular. But when we look at the amounts that are actually lost through that particular payment method, bank payment or bank transfer or bank payments and cryptocurrency, more people lose money through those payment methods. People lose more money through those payment methods than any of the other payment methods on here. So although people try to scam you by using a credit or debit card more often, when consumers actually report being scammed, the method of cryptocurrency and bank transfer or bank payments, people lose more money through those methods. The other on this page here is the contact method. So when people were contacted for a fraud or attempted to be defrauded, text was actually surprisingly the most popular method, followed by phone call, which is perennial, always on, within the top few. But when there was an actual loss, more people lost money through social media, as well as through online, as well as through online. I don't know if you can see that very quickly, very clearly, but it's a very big number when people actually lost money. Let's look quickly at the top report categories. As we talked about already, identity theft as far as a report category. Thank you, Steve. Identity theft is number one. Has been for 10 plus years, identity theft, the biggest category of reports that we receive. That is its own category. As I mentioned, fraud has several different subcategories underneath it. But if we look at the second category, imposter scams, that is a fraud. That's where somebody is pretending to be a trusted person to get consumers to send money or to give personal information. Followed by third, credit bureaus, information furnishers, and report users. That's an other category, so it's not necessarily an attempt to defraud you, but it is a big complaint category where people are complaining about a credit reporting agency or a furnisher of information to a credit reporting agency. And then we go fourth and fifth, online shopping, negative reviews. We had talked about shopping. Banks and lenders comes in at number 5. That's another category where it may not necessarily be an attempt to defraud you, but it's a complaint about an experience you had with a bank or a lender. Next slide, Steve, real quick. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rushing through these, but wanted to just focus in on the fraud categories. So those categories of reports that we received that are categorized as fraud. Somebody attempting to steal it, somebody has stolen money from you or attempted to steal money from you. The top 5 for 2022, imposter scams, which many of the scams that Steve and I talked about earlier, those are forms of imposter scams. Again, somebody who pretends to be a trusted person to get you to send money. Online shopping and negative reviews, that also was in Steve's, top 10, online shopping. Undisclosed costs, failure to deliver on time, non-delivery of items that you ordered, things of that nature. Number third on our list. Now, again, this is national. So this is, of the millions of complaints that we receive. Prizes, sweepstakes, and lotteries. Again, the area that we just talked about comes in at number 3. Followed by number 4, investment-related scams. So these can be things, investment opportunities, day trading, invest in gold, invest in silver, invest in gemstones, those sorts of things. Big opportunity to be scammed there. And rounding out our top 5, which again, Steve and I discussed, business and job opportunities. So they're perennial again, the categories sometimes flip around, but those have for the last many years always been in the top 5. The next slide simply shows the breakdown for Illinois. I won't go through this in detail, but we do break out our data by state. This shows, again, internet or identity theft is number 1 for Illinois, as it is, I'm sure, for most of the other states. But here's the breakdown for report categories. And I do want to leave some time here for Q&A, Steve. So I will leave it at that. My apologies for rushing through that.
Oh, no problem. You got a lot of information there as well. I'm going to, while you're catching your breath, I'm going to go over a couple things that we want to end with. And then, Tom, if you're still on, you can start getting some questions ready for us, Tom, and we'll be done in just a second. So why scams work? Because they establish a connection. They provide credibility and they play on emotions. So again, these are individuals that do this for a living. It's important to understand that and to know that there are scammers who are very good at what they do, and they wake up each and every day to scam in any way you can. Again, you can pass this information on to your friends, family, and coworkers. Don't be pressurized in anything. Never make a quick decision. What I mean by that is, like, within 30 minutes, you got to do something. That the only thing you should do in 30 minutes is buy a pizza. Everything else you should do research on the organization. That's number 2. Doing the research with the Better Business Bureau, with other sources. Never provide for personal information to anybody calls you out of the blue, and find out why they need it. And don't give it to them unless they really need to get it. But then you have to do the research before giving it to them. Don't click on links, on email messages, text messages. Never send money to someone you don't know or have never met. And those romance scams, they play on those emotions as well. Never send money for emergency situation. You can verify the emergency. A lot of times people get this, what we call grandparent scams, is where you get a call and saying, I'm your nephew or whatever it may be, grandson, and I've been injured in Mexico, and I need money to get out of jail. Could you wire money? It happens. I talked to bankers where it actually happened to them personally. It works. Anything like that, make sure that it's an emergency situation. You can verify it first. We need consumers. Again, the FTC, the city of Chicago, we need consumers to come forward. We have a scam tracker at the Better Business Bureau. If you spotted a scam, whether you're not, you lost the money, please go to bbb.org/scam tracker to issue the report. And we keep track of scams all across North America. And we try to prevent this from happening to others. And then we notify the authorities. I know we said a lot of information here. The Better Business Bureau is on social, on all of our Facebook, Twitter accounts, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Chicago BBB. We have a newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter at bbb.org/Chicago Buzz. As well, you can go to the FTC, and the city of Chicago has newsletters as well. And with that, look for the BBB, which is a sign of a better business. And Tom, do you have any questions that you can tee up for us?
Hey, Steve, sure, and thank you. I'll let our friends at BACP go through the list because they've been coming in, but one that I'm looking at, would a general contractor that does not complete a job but has your money, would that be considered a scam?
Yes, it would be a scam. They scammed you and not finishing the job or not completion, or it's just a bad business too. So sometimes the business folds and they take from one person to pay another. A complaint should be filed with the city of Chicago if it's in the city, Better Business Bureau, and the FTC because they didn't fulfill the contract. But we have to go through the whole process to see if it truly was a scam or not. Bill?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. Definitely go through those resources. Again, the contract should determine what your recourse is in a situation like that. Unfortunately, this may end up becoming a private dispute to where the FTC can't get involved because we can only bring actions on behalf of the public at large when we see a pattern or practice. But certainly you have your rights under a contract, or even if it's not addressed in the contract and the company is not fulfilling their end of the bargain, you have opportunities through the Better Business Bureau, through the city, even through the Illinois Attorney General's office to try to get that addressed. Short of, you, of course, always have the right to hire an attorney. We want to avoid having to do that, because it's not cheap to do so. No, again, this is where reading the contract and understanding what your recourse is should something happen like this, so that you're informed going into this just in case.
I want to check in with BACP because I'm seeing the most recent ones, but one of the most recent ones, someone has used my son's social security number to get tax returns. What can I do?
Go to identitytheft.gov, please. Absolutely. That is a form of identity theft. And you also will need to contact the IRS. And there is a whole host of it. I'm sure Steve at the Better Business Bureau website has information there too. But identitytheft.gov is the website that will provide you. That is a form of tax ID theft, of tax identity theft. So it's a different type of identity theft, but it is identity theft nonetheless. And you need to take action, and you need to take action quickly.
And also, like I mentioned earlier, and I think Bill mentioned as well, your children's identities can be stolen at any time. It's also good to check their credit report on a yearly basis as well at annualcreditreport.com to get that from the providers, because it does happen to children more than you have ever heard of, we ever heard of. And a lot of the times it's with the IRS too. So you got to be very careful on that.
One other one I'm looking at, how can I stop mail offers for credit cards, lines of credits, and business loans from email sources and postal? Is that possible? It is overwhelming.
Years ago, they used to have a place that you can do that on the mail, stop the mail, but it's this, I don't know any Better Business, but we don't know of any reliable source that you can do that. A lot of times you put your names on lists and then they buy and sell it to others. So if sometimes you're filling out applications for somebody else and they sell your name, you got to read those privacy policies, what they're doing with your name. It's really not giving out your information to anybody who doesn't need it, and that could stop some of it. The rest you can put it in your junk file and then let your internet provider know it's junk, and hopefully they'll take action against them. Cell phones you can mark it as junk, and hopefully they will take action against them. It's hard to do, but go ahead. Any thoughts on that, Bill?
There used to be, and it's escaping me now, but there used to be a place that you could go to opt out of like pre-screened credit offers. Right. But that's certainly not going, so that may stop some of the junk mail or the pre-approved credit card offers that you're getting in the mail, but that's not necessarily going to stop the emails and the spam text messages and the spam email and all the other stuff, robocalls, all that that we're getting. Unfortunately, legitimate businesses are not going to follow the law. They're not going to honor your request to opt out. That's tough. That's tough. That's something that I try to do, when going after some of these scam artists, is to go after these robocallers and these telemarketers to stop them from doing what they're doing. But it's whack-a-mole. You take one down, 10 more open up. Your information is out there. It's bought and sold. It's a commodity. It's valuable information, and it is difficult. Hopefully, just hit the delete, hit the delete, hit the delete.
Exactly.
And don't answer the phone calls.
That's right. If you let it go to voicemail, you said it right, Bill. Let it go to voicemail. I'd rather you listen to the voicemail, do the research on that phone number, than calling and or answering and talking to a scammer.
Yes.
It's getting to a point, even if it's a local number, but with your prefix in it, think it's a neighbor or a friend or a coworker, don't answer. Let it go to voicemail unless you know them and they're part of your address book.
A quick follow-up to the contractor question says, I do have a contract. What if I do have a contract and it's not met? Steve, Bill, can you talk about what you should do as far as, either filing a complaint or a report to the FTC and the BBB?
Exactly. I'll start, and Bill, you can chime in too as well. Again, that's what we do. We handle complaints, and we also have mediation and what's called binding arbitration. So it's a contract that's not fulfilled by the company. We try to resolve the matter for you. And then we also offer mediation and binding arbitration, which is, like I said, mentioned, enforced by Illinois law. It's up to the contractor if they want to resolve the matter. But the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So you got other places, the Attorney General's office, the city of Chicago has a great resource for handling complaints on businesses located in Chicago as well. So just go as loud as you can and go to different entities and file complaints.
Yeah, I echo what Steve says there. Again, file complaints along the way. Certainly reach out to the Better Business Bureau, the Illinois Attorney General, the City of Chicago. Those would be your best resources at first. Certainly file a complaint with us. As well, we can't intervene in an individual dispute at the FTC level, but certainly if we see a pattern or a practice going on here, if this is a contractor that is doing this, repeatedly, and those are situations where we may be able to get involved if there is a pattern or a practice that's going on. But as far as an individual dispute, unfortunately, we can't get involved. Hopefully, though, your problem is resolved there, short of having to go further. But you always do have a right to, of course, consult with an attorney, go to court. But we want to hopefully prevent you from having to get there to begin with.
And one other quick question, what are the current scams that used car buyers should be aware of? I presume that with the recent floods, natural disasters, and storms, there are flawed cars on the market being offered to the unwary.
Yes, Tom, it happens quite often. The Better Business Bureau just issued a warning about a week ago on that as well. Anytime there's a major disaster or calamity, sometimes the cars do make it into our areas that may have been flooded and try to resalvaged, and title washing. We have a lot of information on our website on that, but you really have to know who you're buying from, trust the source, and hopefully you can have a mechanic look at a used car because they can see things that you can't, including maybe water infiltration or the new carpeting or if it smells like mold or whatever it may be. So there are unscrupulous dealers, unfortunately. There's bad actors, there's bad, public people that's not public, regular consumers who sell vehicles to consumers. So you gotta be wary of that as well. So just be careful with who you're buying from.
Hi, guys. We're a little over, so we got like 5 more minutes before this
Great.
webinar ends.
Any other questions, Tom, on there?
I don't see any. Are we seeing anything from the chat box on the end of BACP?
No, it looks like you answered all of the questions. I was following along.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I want to thank the City of Chicago and Commissioner Ken Meyer for the opportunity to have this webinar brought to you by the City of Chicago. And I'd like to thank Bill as well from the FTC. And I really want you consumers to check out these offers, these companies with the Better Business Bureau and other sources. And if the offer seems good to be true, it usually is. And if you see a scam, let us know about it. And there's a lot of information out there. Do the research ahead of time, not after. Right, Bill?
Absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody here today. I thank the BBB and the City of Chicago BACP for hosting this. Again, a reminder, although it's National Consumer Protection Week, we want you to be vigilant all year long. And we have wonderful resources available at the BBB's website, certainly at the FTC's website. And if there's anything that we can do to assist, please do not hesitate to reach out. This is what we do.
Thank you to our presenters today. And thank you for all our attendees for attending. If you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. Again, that's bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. To learn about our upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/business education. Again, that's chicago.gov/business education. Thanks again to today's presenter and hope to see you on Friday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.